In her book, All Joy and No Fun, which is perhaps the best phrase ever written to describe parenthood, Jennifer Sr. referred to the early years of parenting babies and toddlers as the bunker years. You spend a lot of time at home because of naps and such, and even when you're out and about with kids, so the trips are usually short and hectic. Not only that, but for much of the time you don't even have your body to yourself between breastfeeding and pregnancy. Someone is always touching you. Sometimes entire weeks go by without a minute alone. This is the time of life when going grocery shopping alone or even going to the dentist can feel like a vacation. I laughed out loud when I was listening to Jessica Dahlquist talk about this stage on her podcast, Extraordinary Moms. She said,
I remember, this is a really sad, honest kind of confession, in Virginia when I lived there. I was feeling really depleted, 3 under age 5 and 3 kids under age 5, and I was just totally drained. And I remember driving by the hospital, on the way to and from preschool. I would pass this county hospital, and I would think, if I just had like a little something wrong, like an appendicitis or something, then I could feel okay about having a little time to myself and going in and resting a little bit. How messed up is that?
This is the How She Moms podcast, where we talk about how different moms solve the same problems. I'm Whitney Archibald, a mother of 5 kids myself. I collect ideas so you can pick and choose what works for you and your family. I'm a few years past the bunker years now that my youngest is 5 and my older kids can babysit. But when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, I felt like I had catapulted right back to the bunker. I'm sure I'm not the only mom who has fantasized along with Flynn Rider from Tangled when he sang his dream. On an island that I own, tanned and rested and alone. This episode is all about how to find islands of our own. Islands of time and islands of space where we can be alone and recharge. This is the first of 2 episodes about self-care. The next one will include lots of different ways to care for ourselves, but I wanted to start with this episode because I feel like this desperate need for alone time is pretty unique to motherhood, and especially to motherhood right now, in a time of homeschooling, remote schooling, and working from home. To start, I'm going to tell you a little story. 10 years ago, my husband and I went to Costa Rica with his family and left our then 3 children, ages 5, 3, and 1, with my parents. This was the first time we'd been on a trip without our kids, and it felt both luxurious and strange to get on a plane without them. Navigating the airport was a breeze, and I actually read a book on the plane. When we arrived at our vacation rental, we were amazed. We could see the ocean from the pool patio. Monkeys were just hanging out in the tropical trees, and iguanas sauntered across the lawn. It was paradise. And I was a crazy person. Instead of relaxing and enjoying the view or heading to explore the beach, I was running around to all the bedrooms, taking it upon myself to help figure out where everyone should sleep, especially the family that had brought their young son. I had this nagging worry that no one had started to cook the dry beans that we had bought for dinner, and you know how long beans take to cook. I ran to start simmering the beans and then set about unpacking and settling into my room. I was in full-on mom mode, even though no one there needed to be mothered, especially not by me. And then I burned the beans. Appalled and embarrassed that I had burned dinner, I retreated to my bedroom for a little navel-gazing. When had I become this person? Was I even capable of enjoying this amazing vacation? Had motherhood turned me into a micromanaging freak? Happily, a good night's sleep and a little time at the beach transformed me from a mom with a capital M into a real person. In a few more days, I was not only a person, I was Whitney. I laughed out loud at my book, which was Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, still one of my very favorite books of all time, and I quoted annoyingly from it to anyone in the vicinity. I woke up early to read my scriptures and write in my journal by the pool. I hiked, explored, and I frolicked in the waves. And then came the most astonishing moment of the trip. Everyone else walked down to the beach, and I stayed behind to grab my beach gear. Soon I looked around me, and I realized I was alone. Alone! It felt so weird and wonderful, and that feeling made me realize how long it had been since I was completely alone with no obligation to anyone else. My family at the beach was going to have fun whether I was there or not, so I decided not to go. I grabbed my book and hopped on a pool float. I read until I got hot, jumped in the pool, and even practiced my diving because no one was there to judge. I sang out loud. I read and wrote some more. It was one of the best moments of my life, a moment in which I felt completely myself. It was like I was on my own little island, alone. That day helped me realize how rare and wonderful solitude can be for moms. A word about mom guilt here. It's okay to feel a little desperate for some time to yourself, and it's okay to actually schedule in that alone time. It may feel selfish or ungrateful to take time for yourself when there's so much on your to-do list and so many people on your to-be-with list. But in my experience with moms, especially moms of young kids, it's rare to find a mom who takes too much time for herself. If the balance starts to tip to that direction, you'll feel it and you can scale back. When you're in the thick of it, it sometimes seems impossible to carve out some alone time, but over the years I've discovered several strategies for sneaking in some islands of precious time and space for myself, even if it's just a few minutes here and there. And of course, I've found other moms with great strategies of their own. I'm going to split them into 2 categories, islands of time and islands of space, with 6 ideas apiece. The first way to find time for yourself is to take the night off. One of my favorite strategies comes from Jessica Dahlquist, who we heard from in the introduction. In episode 213 of her fabulous podcast, Extraordinary Moms, she talks about how she goes on a weekly self-date night. Here's Jessica.
What I want to share with you is this thing that we've implemented as of this year that my husband actually suggested. I think it started because I was kind of complaining to him that I felt like I didn't have any time to myself. If I wanted to go to Target, I had to load all 3 kids up in the car, and they were, asking for things, and it was never a smooth process, even on our best day. Sometimes I just wanted to roam the aisles. Yes, I had time at home, like we're home a lot, and I do have time, but there's always, some type of interruption. Somebody always needs something. I could read a book, but didn't feel quite as luxurious, when somebody was sitting on top of me or when somebody was interrupting saying they needed a drink or something. And so he said, well, why don't we dedicate one night a week for your date night? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I'll be in charge of the kids. I'll put them to bed. I'll clean up the house, and you can go and just do your thing. You can save up errands if you want, or you can just take a book and go sit at a Starbucks and read, or go to Barnes & Noble and just relax. You can go do that Target run and feel guilt-free. You can go to a movie. And I'm like, are you serious? And he's like, well, yeah, like I'll babysit the kids. So it's not costing us anything. I'm taking care of them. So there's not that burden, and you can just have that time to yourself, and you can do whatever you want. And so it began. So Thursdays have become my date night. Now, sometimes it shifts based upon our schedule, but typically Thursdays is an okay time. And I will leave after dinner, after we do dinner at home and dinner's kind of cleaned up. And so I'll leave about, 6:45 when Jackson is on the cusp of about to go to bed. But then I don't have to do the bedtime routine, which feels like a real luxury because I am doing it on a day-to-day basis. And so I leave about 6:45 and I just kind of take off. I usually always take a book with me just in case. I usually save up about one errand that I wanted to do unaccompanied. So usually it's like Home Goods or TJ Maxx, somewhere where I'm just doing some strolling, or where my kids would be likely to grab breakable things and maybe break them. And then I just set out to do my little errand. Sometimes it's returns, things like that. But just feeling the power of a quiet car, plugging my phone in and having my podcast over the speakers instead of in my headphones, it just feels like such a luxury.
Molly Liggett and her husband Jay have 6 children. They have a great system worked out so they can both take several nights off each week.
We had a lot of little kids spaced really close together every other year, and my husband used to travel a lot. So he would get home and I would be exhausted from little kids, and I would be needing social interaction or even just alone time. But he was also tired from working, and so we kind of decided that whatever we did during the day was a wash. It equaled out. And so when he came home and we were home together, that we would do everything 50-50. And so what we tried, and that what really worked for us, was to take turns every other night to put the kids to bed. And so at 7 o'clock, we knew that the other person was free to do whatever they wanted. So if they wanted to take a bath, or if they wanted to go out with friends, or go to the movies by themselves, whatever they wanted to do, that was totally fine, guilt-free. And so we have been doing it for years, and it has worked out great because neither of us feels like, oh, well, you went to book club this week and now you're going out with a friend. Like, if it's on your night off, you can do whatever you want. And so not only for me, but for my husband, it has been wonderful. Another positive aspect has been that we have gotten to have one-on-one time with our kids that we didn't get to have before. And we would do things differently than the other person did. So my husband makes up elaborate stories for the kids to tell them to bed, and I read them a chapter book that we keep on reading through. So our kids actually look forward to it having, kind of a different routine when they get put to bed by having either mom or dad do it, but it's always something a little different.
The second way to find time is to designate a mom weekend. Weekends are supposed to be a break to recharge from the stress of the week. Not so much for moms. Several years ago, I found myself feeling resentful about weekends. My husband and kids wanted to use the weekends to recharge and relax from a busy week of school and work, but someone still has to do the work of feeding and cleaning up, etc. And with everyone home, that work multiplies. That meant the weekend was actually my busiest time of the week. I could have laid down the law and insisted that we all split the work or that we spend every Saturday doing chores together, but I believe in weekends. I wanted them to enjoy their days off, and I especially didn't want to spend every Saturday cleaning. I wanted to be out spending time together and going on adventures. Finally, I found a solution. I needed a weekend too, and Saturday and Sunday were not the right time. I started picking one day a week, usually a Wednesday, just to break things up, and I designated that day as my personal weekend. Now I never miss it. Most of what makes a day a weekend is a mindset. I just kind of take it easy on my weekend, fixing slacker meals or serving leftovers, taking time to read, exercise, hike, or whatever else I feel like doing. Sometimes I get a babysitter, other times I just involve whichever children aren't in school in my leisurely day. And I usually let them watch a bit more TV than usual. The best result of this change in routine is that I'm no longer resentful of actual weekends. Now that I have my own, I'm happy to help the rest of my family really enjoy theirs. If you have another job in addition to being a mom and can't pick a weekday, you can still designate a set amount of time over the weekend for yourself. Carly Rare, a mom and dental hygienist, takes a 2-hour mom weekend every Sunday afternoon. Her kids and husband know that this is her time and they entertain each other. She usually just spends the time in her room, napping, reading, or doing whatever else she wants to do. A third way to take time for yourself is to go on an occasional night away. Often we think of planning a getaway with our spouses, but it can be easier to figure out a night by yourself because you don't have to find a babysitter. And sometimes it's just what you need. This doesn't have to be expensive or elaborate. You could get creative here. Maybe you just ask a good friend if you can house sit for a night while they're on vacation. But just a night or two where you don't have to put anyone to bed, make food for anyone else, and you can sleep uninterrupted for as long as you want can be priceless. A great example of a mom who did this for a while is April Perry, founder of Power of Moms and also Learn, Do, Become. She got a hotel room for herself one night a month so she could make the time to write a book about her mother who had Alzheimer's disease. She would then read chapters of that book to her mother and father each Thursday when she went to visit them. Because of those weekends away, she was able to finish her beautiful book, Thursdays with Zoe. She talks about this book on episode 29 of the 3 and 30 podcast. It's a great episode. Devin Smitty, my new marketing consultant and a mother of 2 young daughters, actually prefers a staycation.
My husband will take the kids on his own, and he's the type of guy who actually really loves this. He doesn't just tolerate it and endure it. He actually really loves it. He takes the kids for a weekend. In the spring, he went out to Tennessee to see his family. He's taken them in the camper for the weekend. But it can even look like him just going and staying with my parents who live right down the road with the kids for the weekend, so that I have at least 24 to 48 hours in our home alone with no one.
That's amazing.
And we've done this 3 times now. It's about every 6 months we do it. And the first time I thought, oh, I'm just gonna sleep and I'm gonna watch Netflix that I haven't watched in 2 years. I thought it would be all about relaxation, and some of it was, but actually what I found filled my cup a lot more was I'm going to get to this project that I have wanted to do. Doesn't feel like a burden, I've wanted to do it, and I'm going to be able to do it all in one uninterrupted chunk. I didn't realize how much I craved being able to complete something without interruption, and how that was the gift I was getting, was whether you choose to read a book or reorganize the pantry, or I resealed our countertops, which sounds like such a ridiculous thing to want to, but it was so wonderful because I could do it without any interruption. I put podcasts in my ears, and then it was oh, and I get to do whatever I want to do for dinner tonight, even if it's a bowl of cereal. I needed that quiet, uninterrupted time to fill my cup back up so that I could look forward again and say, okay, now I'm like rested enough to remember what my priorities are, who I am, what our values are as a family. I'm going to reevaluate like where we're doing well with those and where we need more attention. And so like usually the last day they're gone, I'm journaling a lot. This is where I want to refocus with this kid. This is where I want to refocus in my marriage. And then when they get back, I'm genuinely like so excited to see them. I feel refreshed, rejuvenated, and it only takes like 24 or 48 hours. I usually go for a weekend.
The fourth way to get some time to yourself is to get a babysitter. I don't know why, but with my first few babies, I thought I could only justify getting a babysitter if I needed one, if I had an important appointment that I couldn't bring them to, or if I was going on a date with my husband. But I'm giving you permission right now to get a babysitter, even if you just want to go throw rocks into a lake by yourself for an hour. This doesn't have to be expensive. Most of my babysitting, especially on weekdays when teenagers are in school, comes in the form of babysitting swaps. I was part of an official babysitting co-op for a while, but usually I just find a friend or two whose kids are compatible with mine and we set up a swapping system. Devin Smitty is also a strong believer in getting babysitters.
It is okay to arrange childcare for your children, whatever that looks like, whether it's sending them to a preschool, even as young as 2, for a few hours in the morning, or having like an ongoing appointment with your mother-in-law to watch them, or a friend, a kid exchange. Just having a couple hours, even if that's all it is, to yourself, that has been so life-changing for me. It's just allowed me, again, to kind of feel some more control in my day that I didn't have before. Like, allows me, like, kind of come up and take a gulp of air before diving back down again and being, like, in it, you know? So I would say to every new mom, like, just maybe not right away, obviously, especially if you're nursing, that's really difficult, but you know, out year 1, 2, 3, 4 years old, those preschool years, like, don't hesitate to set up something to give yourself some time. That once the schools all closed down, those 2 mom friends that I was talking about that have the same age kids, we arranged a mom swap that we did all summer. And that straight up came out of desperation. That was literally us texting each other and being like, I can't do this all summer. Like, I cannot be the only one here for them 24/7. With nowhere to go because the libraries were closed. So there was no more like, let's go for story time and kill a couple hours. Or even in the beginning, it was like you couldn't go to the playgrounds or the parks. Yeah. And so we said, all right, let's all make an agreement that we're going to be super careful outside of this bubble in terms of like who we expose ourselves to. And this is going to be our play bubble. And every Monday, a different mom would have all 6 kids at the house all morning long. And because everything was closed, it wasn't like the other 2 moms who were having an off day could like go to Target or something. Right. We couldn't. Right. But just having that time alone at the house felt so good.
This is what I call the power of 3s, teaming up with 2 other friends for a babysitting swap so you get 2 out of 3 babysitting sessions free. The bonus is that if you want, you can go out with the other mom that's free.
Once you get into that type of relationship or like arrangement with other moms, it makes it so much easier to ask for help in other ways too. I don't know why that is, but it's almost like once you've gotten past that first little hurdle of vulnerability, it makes it so much easier to jump other ones with those 2 women. So now it's like no problem to say, you know, my husband and I really need a date night. Can we do that again? Can we do that trading kids again thing? Or, you know, one of them needs to go to the doctor for their well visit. And I just don't want to take, where I normally would never ask for just something so small like that. Yeah. But now that we've already broken that ice, it makes it feel a lot easier.
A 5th way to find some time to yourself is to embrace the morning or night, depending on your preference. This idea can be hard for moms with teeny ones. When you have little babies, you just grab every bit of sleep you can. I definitely wasn't savoring any sunrises during the bunker years, but incredibly, those baby years do pass, and one day you wake up and realize you just had a good night's sleep. This is when you can start claiming part of each day as your own. For me, it's the morning. I love waking up before my kids and taking some time to read, study, and plan my day. I'm lucky that my kids don't usually get up on their own before 7, so it's pretty easy to keep this time to myself. But Ashley Freehand manages to keep her morning alone time sacred even though her kids are early risers too.
So right now, currently, I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old that are in 1st and 4th grade. And so One of the really important boundaries that I have in my life and that I encourage all other moms to have is a wake up boundary. And what that looks like is that my children both know that they are allowed to wake up whenever they want to. But if it is not 7 o'clock, they cannot expect me to do anything except for give them a hug, a kiss, and a hello, and that's it. And it kind of seems harsh, but it's not. It is something that they know. And they do try to push that boundary a lot, but they come down, they say good morning, and I just let them know, like, hey guys, it's not 7 o'clock. Mom is doing my quiet time, is what I call it, and I'll be with you at 7 o'clock. What I like to do in the morning is make sure that all of my needs are taken care of first. So when I wake up, I make sure I get dressed, I brush my teeth, I do all of the hygiene things. I actually put on makeup. I maybe do my hair a few times a week. And I sit down and I do a Bible study, whether it's reading the Bible or actually doing a physical Bible study that I journal through, or maybe I just pull out my own journal and just talk to God that way. And then I also like to sometimes just read a book, give myself a pedicure, honestly, whatever I want to do in the morning, but I try to make sure that I'm not working. Because I am a work from home mom, I'm an entrepreneur, I own 3 different businesses, and so to me, self-care is not working in the morning. That is giving priority to my clients instead of myself. So I really try to stay off social media. I don't check my email first thing in the morning because I really want to focus on me and my needs and make sure that I'm taken care of before my kids need me all the time.
Ashley is a photographer, and she hosts her own podcast about thriving as a mom and business owner called The Purpose Gathering. She also hosts an event by that name. You can find her at thepurposegathering.com and on Instagram at thepurposegathering. You can also find some time on the other end of the day by being strict about bedtime and designating a specific time of night as adult time. Notice how I say this as if it's a simple thing. To me, it is not. Perhaps it's because I wake up early, but I'm not very good at firm bedtime boundaries. It tends to drag on and on at my house. But I do know moms who are really good at getting their kids to bed early and consistently. My friend Rachel Beckstead's kids go to bed by 7 o'clock, and they know not to mess with adult time. Even if they're still awake, they stay in their rooms. This gives Rachel the whole evening to either spend some time with her husband or by herself. For lots of moms, this is their best time to carve out some alone time. The 6th time to find alone time is nap time and quiet time. Nap time is a naturally occurring break or two in your day when you have young kids. It's easy to get in the habit of scurrying around during this time, trying to get work done that's difficult to do when kids are awake. I definitely fell into this trap for a long time. I'd work so hard during nap time that I was exhausted when the babies woke up. But then a few babies in, I realized that I could use this time to recharge too, either to catch up on sleep, just relax and breathe for a minute, or even sit and read a book. Some moms are really good at enforcing quiet time for their kids even after they're done taking naps. It's a great way to prolong this time for everyone to recharge. I'm going to interrupt for a minute to share a little clip from last week's Patreon episode, How Delphine Moms. Going from living with our parents to starting families of our own is a huge cultural shift for anyone. But for Delphine Brandt, it also meant marrying an American and moving from her home country of France to the United States when their first child was only 6 weeks old. The Brandt family has been adapting elements of both French and American culture to create their own distinct family culture ever since. From wardrobe,
I don't think French moms let their kids dress themselves.
to discipline style.
And I remember my oldest one throwing a huge fit. And my parents being there, and my dad said, well, why don't you spank her? And I just answered, I don't think she'll stop crying if I spank her.
And of course, food.
Over my dead body, my children will not eat peanut butter. I thought it was just the most disgusting fast food. and now I'm sending Uncrustable every day for lunch.
It was so fun to talk to Delphine, and I'm sure you'll love her interview. To access these bonus episodes, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/howshemoms and join our Patreon community. For just $5 a month, you can access all of these episodes, which you can subscribe to right in whatever podcast app you use, plus worksheets, printables, and lists of my favorite books, podcasts, etc. Plus, you'll be supporting my podcast so I can keep producing my regular content. I really appreciate the support. Thanks. Now we're going to talk about spaces. Sometimes you are the only person available to take care of your kids and you can't leave them alone, but you really need a dose of solitude. The first place I'm going to talk about is the shower. The shower is a magical place where a mom can be alone with enough white noise to drown out most of the other noise in the house. I've gotten some of my greatest inspiration in the shower, including this sonnet that I wrote. Ahem. This 3x7 cell might some confine. For others it's a mundane part of life. And yet for me it's holy as a shrine, a refuge from the storms of daily strife. In truth, it's one of my most favorite spots. So warm and calm, a place where I breathe deep. I sing my best and think my deepest thoughts, and even on occasion stop to weep. So don't disturb me for at least an hour, for I'm a mom and I deserve this shower. Granted, there are some times in a mom's life where you really can't even take a shower without a baby seat in the bathroom with you. Often this means an entire shower with a screaming or whining child. That certainly doesn't count as alone time. But once your child is past that baby stage, the shower, or gasp, even a nice soak in the bath, can be a great place for a quick dose of solitude. I've found that the only way to keep my small children from walking in and out of the bathroom at will while I'm taking a shower is to put on a TV show for the duration of the shower, and usually while I'm getting ready too. I also often use the time when I'm getting ready for the day to catch up on some podcasts or audiobooks. A second place to find some alone time is, oddly enough, the table. I believe in sharing family meals, but there are 3 a day. You can afford to have at least one to yourself. Breakfast and lunch may be the best opportunities because they're usually less formal than the family dinner. Sometimes I eat breakfast and lunch before the kids eat, sometimes after, but rarely while they're eating because then I would surely be interrupted. When the weather's nice, I love a good breakfast alone on my back deck, just to listen to the quiet, sit still, and enjoy the view. A third place is, kind of obvious, your room. Whether it's your bedroom, a home office, or even just a closet, designate a retreat for yourself in your home where you can be alone and find peace, even if it's just for a few minutes at a time. In one of my favorite parenting books of all time, The Blessing of a Skinned Knee, Wendy Mogul advises that you set boundaries for your kids about respecting your space, particularly your bedroom. Teach them to knock before they enter and that your room is not a place to leave their toys, books, or other possessions. My friend Crystal Evans is a mom and a school teacher. She retreats to her room for 15 minutes right after work each day for a quick stretch of downtime before she faces a busy evening with her children. She explained to them that she needs them to respect this time, but then for the rest of the night, she's theirs. Another place you can be alone is the car. Sometimes when you have young kids, car time is anything but alone time with a bunch of screaming kids in the back. But I've even used a parked car as a very brief escape when I had a super colicky baby who wouldn't stop screaming no matter what I tried. I made sure the baby was safe in his crib and then went out and sat in the car in the garage just to give my ears a brief respite. A few minutes was enough time to regroup, calm myself, and go back inside to keep trying. My mom used to linger alone in the car in our driveway with the doors shut after we all scrambled out. I used to think she was so weird. But of course, I totally do that now. When my kids were younger, I would always be the one to volunteer to pick people up from the airport just to have that drive to myself. And a work commute can be a great time to collect yourself before heading home to the kids. When her daughter was a baby, Andrea Quimby's commute was the only time she had to herself.
I was living in New Jersey with my parents and then commuting to Connecticut, so commuting through 3 states to get to work every day. I had absolutely no margin in my life. I was literally in the car, at work, in the car, shoveling food in my mouth for dinner, maybe seeing my daughter for a second, maybe, and then going to bed and doing it all over again. So my mothering was it was outsourced to, my mom and a nanny that we had helping. And so my only self-care, I would say, happened in the car. I tried to make the most of that time in the car. And I really tried to fill myself up with very deliberately chosen podcasts that were all life-affirming, that were all giving me encouragement, giving me positive messages. And then I also used the time to send Voxer notes and listen to Voxer notes. I just was trying to get through life at that point.
The fifth place is your yard. One of my favorite places to be alone is just outside at my own home. When I lived in a house with a lawn larger than a postage stamp, I used to love to mow it. The noise of the mower blocked everything else out, and I was alone with my thoughts. I wrote some great poems and essays while mowing. I also love weeding. It's such a mindless activity. You can just sit and think and pull one satisfying weed after another. Audra Elkington loves to start her day on her front porch for just 5 to 10 minutes, soaking in the sun, listening to birds chirp, and meditating. Another place to be pretty much alone is a path. Even if you're pushing a stroller, going on a walk or jog can feel like alone time. The kids enjoy it too, and getting out together is so therapeutic. This was a little tricky in the winter for the 9 years I lived in Minnesota, but luckily everything in our city was connected by underground tunnels, so we'd just drive downtown and walk through the boroughs. Any kind of path can be a great place to get some space. I remember a particularly rough night with 5 kids between 1 and 10. As soon as my husband walked in the door, I handed him the baby, grabbed my running shoes, and just ran out my pent-up aggression. One of my favorite ways to use a path is cycling. I got a road bike 2 years ago, and I love riding for miles and miles. I never bring headphones, I just think and think. Whatever your own unique mom life looks like, find those little islands of time and space to sneak in a bit of alone time to practice being yourself. There's nothing like motherhood to teach you just how beautiful solitude can be. Thank you for listening to the How She Moms podcast. If you like it, tell a friend. The bigger the community, the more ideas. There are lots of ways you can add your ideas to the How She Moms community. We have a Facebook group where we share ideas about upcoming topics and help each other solve problems we're facing in motherhood. You can also follow How She Moms on Instagram for quick tips and ideas. And you can go to howshemoms.com where you'll find transcripts of episodes and lots of other great resources. Special thanks to my mom, Susan Singley, for recording my theme music. She played this song all the time when I was growing up, and to me, it's the soundtrack of motherhood.